Welcome into another episode of Texas Sports Unfiltered. Our Big 12 preseason tour continues, and today we are talking about the hated Oklahoma Sooners. That's right, we're going north of the Red River, and we're talking to Tyler McComas, who hosts Radio Afternoon Drive up at the Ref in Norman, Oklahoma. Tyler, what's going on, brother? Thanks for joining us today.
The hated Oklahoma Sooners. I didn't mean to. I'm going to adjust my camera there. There's Grant Calcaterra one-on-one in the end zone there at AT&T Stadium. So
OPI. He pushed off, and you know it. Come on, man.
Should have settled for a field. Well, I'll tell you, the bad call was the ensuing kickoff. Texas runs it back for a touchdown, and there was a holding call. I don't think that there was holding on that play. I don't think there was holding. Probably because there wasn't holding.
No, there wasn't holding at all. That was that game sucks. Yeah, I was so happy after what went down at the Cotton Bowl earlier that season. And it's like, oh, maybe the tide is finally turning. Maybe we've got Oklahoma's number. And of course, a couple of months later, you guys got your revenge and you guys won another Big 12 championship, which is obviously what y'all are trying to do on the way out. I mean, Oklahoma has dominated this league since its inception, but obviously last year was an unmitigated disaster up in Norman. The worst year that you guys have had as a program since the John Blake era in the late 90s. We'll start with the head coach before we get to some of the players and some of the personnel questions that Oklahoma is dealing with this year. But, man, I mean, what's the confidence level with Brent Venables? It felt like once he took the job, because of how good he was as a DC in Norman, because of what he did at Clemson, like everybody was excited that Brent Venables was on board, and it was all F. Lincoln Riley, and this is the real guy. And then, well, the season started and things fell apart pretty quickly. Is there still a lot of confidence surrounding the head coach up there, or are people now kind of in wait-and-see mode to make sure that BV is the right dude?
Well, first off, it is still F. Lincoln Riley, so we need San Jose State for a big win this weekend. Let's do it, boys. No, we had last week on my show, we kind of did and we get this feel all off season long, and I wasn't surprised the response is just kind of a state of the program check, like, we still good with Brent Venables? We all good here? And I would say 98% of the responses are, not only are we good, this is our guy, and he's going to get it done. Now, if I would ask to follow up to every single person that texted in that day, what gives you the most confidence? And you probably know where I'm going with this. Everyone's really optimistic and excited because of the recruiting classes. Like, dude, last year, they signed 2 5-star defensive players. That hasn't happened in several years, right? And not only 2 5-star defensive players, but this kid, Peyton Bowen, man, he's going to be a star. And I think he's going to play this year. So when you just look at the overall balance of the recruiting class last year that finished in the top 5, man, highest ranked recruiting class, I think, of the modern era for OU. But really, when you look at what they did at the edge position, linebacker, secondary as a whole, and you look at what they're doing in recruiting this year, like they missed out on Williams Nwaneri. That was a big recruiting story last week. I still think OU's got a chance to come back and maybe flip that before signing day. But a 5-star defensive lineman, David Stone, is announcing Saturday between OU and Miami. Dominic McKinley, a 5-star from the state of Louisiana, it's thought to be OU in Texas right now. So OU went from 2 years ago having no chance in hell of getting a great defensive class or any elite defensive lineman to this year alone, dude, they're in the top 2 and maybe even lead on 3 5-star defensive linemen. So last year you said it right, dude. It was a disaster. I still can't believe that happened. Like, I'm driving back from Lincoln, Nebraska. Like, this has changed, man. This program's changed. They're on their way. They're going to kick some ass for the rest of the year. And then they were just awful the rest of the conference. But everyone sees what's happening defensively. Everyone sees that the way that he's trying to build a program is really the same way. Like, OU's never won a national championship without an elite defense. And they were never going to have an elite defense with Lincoln Riley. That was just never going to happen. So the blueprint of how Brent is trying to build this is a lot more similar to what people grew up around with OU football. And like, okay, we're going to get back to playing good defense at some point. Everyone's still in on this guy.
Yep. Yeah. And you guys call him Tebow, right? Lincoln Riley.
TBOW, yeah.
Yeah. He obviously recruited offensively incredibly well, but he has not and did not recruit defensively that well during his time in Norman, and that's kind of an issue with USC. We saw it last year. That defense fell apart in the Pac-12 championship game for them. I will say this, though, Tyler, like, as a Texas fan, I know this better than anybody, and I'm sure you guys have poked fun at our expense a lot over the last 12 years. Hey, recruiting doesn't always lead to wins.
It's true, man.
with Charlie, with Tom Herman, and with Sark, the Longhorns were bringing in top 10 class after top 10 class after top 10 class. Now it's gotten better with Sark, and he's doing things that his two predecessors weren't able to do. But X's and O's, man. You personally, I asked about the fan base, but you personally, are you confident that this coaching staff, we'll throw Lebby in there too for offense, but he and Brent Venables, like the recruiting's obviously there, but do you feel like those guys are good enough on game day to make sure that what happened last year doesn't happen anytime soon in Norman?
I'm still going to say yes, but if the in-game management is not better than what it was last year, then I'm going to have a different opinion in a year's time, man, because what you're asking, it's accurate. Like Brent Venables was bad in game management last year. Decisions to kick field goals in terrible conditions against West Virginia last year, the constant 18-second 3-and-out drives that they had that put the defense in a terrible spot. Tempo's great, man. Tempo's great, and that's what Jeff Lebby's offense wants to do. But if tempo is all you can do offensively, especially to run the ball, you got a problem. And that's all they could do last year. They couldn't just not go tempo, line up and run the football on somebody. But the thing with tempo is you go 3-and-out, you can't get a push up front. 18-second drive, you're punting it right back to the offense, and you're leaving the defense in a terrible spot. So I'm still going to say yes, just because Brent Venables hasn't had success as a head coach. But if you look at the track record at Kansas State, at Oklahoma, Clemson, I'm still going to say the guy knows football. And from what I've heard over this offseason, there's been a big emphasis on doing better with in-game managements. Seth Luttrell's on the staff now, former head coach at North Texas, played at Oklahoma for that 2000 championship team. He's in the off-the-field role. Sounds like he's had a lot to do with maybe helping out with some in-game management. So, like, the thought behind the scenes is that's going to be a whole lot better this year. And it better be, man, because it was not good a year ago. It was not good.
No, it was not. And I'm looking at y'all's schedule, and man, how about the Big 12 throwing you guys a bone on your way out? Last year, Texas and Oklahoma got screwed by Big 12 refs. I think there was only one combined offensive holding penalty against a Texas or OU opponent last year, and it might be even worse this year. But the schedule makers doing you guys a solid, and obviously the move to the SEC took a marquee non-conference matchup off the slate for you guys. Because of that, the confidence has to be pretty high. I mean, people in Norman have to be thinking this could be a 10-win season, right?
It's the first if you were to ask an OU fan or even me, okay, why is this team going to win 10 games? It's the first thing I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And I've said it all season long. BK, it's the worst schedule, the easiest, most favorable schedule, however you want to say it, of my lifetime. Now, that's great for a team coming off a 6-7. It's absolutely terrible for a season ticket holder when you look at the crap home schedule that this team has this year. Arkansas State, SMU, Iowa State, UCF, West Virginia, TCU. That's terrible, man.
Oh.
And if you look at the AP Top 25, and I've done this several times this offseason, I'll go through the preseason magazines. Here's every single one of OU's opponents ranked in this preseason magazine. Here's the average out of the three main preseason magazines. You'll have Texas and TCU in the top 25. But after that, man, it's like your third toughest game is the 45th ranked team, at the number 47th ranked team, at the number 52. So, I mean, honestly, it's a schedule that if you look back 10 years ago, it almost feels like OU's a non-Power 5 team. They play three non-Power 5 opponents, and then Cincinnati was just a non-Power 5 last year, right? Same thing for UCF. Same thing for BYU. TCU and West Virginia were non-Power 5 teams like 12 years ago, right? It's like the majority of their schedule, if you go back 15 years, they weren't even playing in a major conference. And that's why, we've been talking about expectations all offseason long. And there are some OU fans that say, well, you go 9-3, you improve, and maybe you feel good about yourself going to the SEC. Hell no, dude. If OU goes 9-3, that's a failure in my opinion, because of the schedule that there is. And on the surface, if you improve three wins from last year, that should be a success. But I'm sorry, man, 9-3 with the crap schedule like this, I don't know how you could look at the season even at a 9-3 and say, okay, we feel good about going into the SEC. Because I tell you what 9-3 is probably going to look like if that's the record. That's probably another loss to Texas, right? Coming off a 49-0 beatdown a year ago. It's probably a loss to TCU at home. It's probably a loss at Oklahoma State. who's your best win at that point? UCF at home? I mean, Iowa State, maybe they fade themselves and bet on OU, like maybe they have a couple times in the past. I mean, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's why my expectations are, if we want to talk about a successful season with this team, and I don't think that this is going to be a banner OU team by any stretch. I think they'll be better. I don't think this is going to be some great OU team. But with the schedule that they have, 10 wins, dude. Anything less than 10 wins is a massive disappointment for me, especially with what you have coming up moving forward in the SEC. Because I just told you this is the easiest schedule that OU's had in my lifetime. Guess what's coming up in 2024? The toughest schedule that OU's had in my lifetime.
Yeah, the Big 12 kind of threw y'all a bone this year, but the SEC gave you the double bird in your first year in the new league. Yeah, it is an easy schedule. I can't believe y'all don't have to play K-State. Like
K-State, Baylor, Tech, man.
Yeah,
three really good teams.
Yeah,
three teams that beat you last year, and you don't have to play them. And that's why I thought, like, not only does OU have an easy schedule, like for Big 12 standards, Texas got a pretty tough schedule, man. Like, one of the tougher schedules in the Big 12.
Yeah, Texas, look, Mike Gundy has dominated Texas in recent years, so I don't expect Oklahoma State to be that good this year, but it's kind of nice that Texas gets to avoid the mullet. And not having to play UCF is nice because I think they're far and away the best of the four newcomers to this league. But you're right. No, I mean, you compare Texas and Oklahoma's schedule this year, it's obvious who got the short end of the stick there. So, yeah, I'm with you. So it feels like what? I mean, the standard at Oklahoma is what the standard at Oklahoma is. It's Arlington or bust for this team then, right?
With the Big 12 being as open as it's been in a while, and I know Texas got a ton of first place votes, but it's open, man. Like, I like Kansas State. I really like their offensive line. That could be like the single best position unit in the entire conference, but they got to replace Deuce Vaughn, man. Felix Anduke, Uzoma, like that's not going to be easy. Every team in this conference has pretty big question marks, I think, going into the year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, like, and with this schedule right here, if you can't be the top two in the league, then I mean, I don't know, man. This is just such a prove-it year for this program and the staff. They've got to get to a Big 12 championship. So back to expectations, to me, like the baseline of it, like where it starts is 10 wins and an appearance in the Big 12 championship game. Because if you miss out on the conference championship game for the third season in a row, and then all of a sudden you're in the SEC, momentum's going to be hard to come by. So are you going to be a better team than Kansas State this year? Maybe not. But you don't play Kansas State in the regular season, and you've got a much more manageable path to the Big 12 championship game than Kansas State does. So all that being said, you've got to get there, man. If you're OU, you have to.
Yeah, I know that's the Big 12's worst nightmare, seeing Texas and Oklahoma. Hell, either would be a problem for them. But if both teams find a way to get that rematch at Jerry World once again, they would absolutely hate that. Look, you brought up 49-0. It was awesome. I think any rational Texas fan would tell you that if Dylan Gabriel was playing in that game, that would not have been the final score. I still think Texas was the better team last year, but come on. That guy's good. Where's he at now? Like, do you think Dylan Gabriel is the best quarterback in this conference? It does kind of feel open. I know Jalen Daniels at Kansas was the preseason player of the year. He's coming off an electric season. Quinn Ewers obviously is at Texas. People down here are super excited about what he's going to do in year two in Austin. But when you combine the talent and the experience that Gabriel has, do you think right now he's the best QB in this conference?
I think he's definitely top three, and I think I would probably say Jalen Daniels at KU. Now, he's got to stay healthy, but just the playmaking ability that he has, I might put him at number one. Now, I wouldn't say that there was a quarterback battle going into the training camp. I'm not. And we talked about that all off season long. I don't think that there was a legitimate quarterback battle. But from everything we heard from Jackson Arnold throughout the spring, it was, well, we don't think that there's a quarterback battle, but, check in a couple weeks in training camp and we'll see what's going on. We don't – that thought is not there right now. Apparently, Dylan Gabriel is having the camp that he's needed to have. And I know that if you get reports at a training camp, everyone looks awesome. Everyone looks great. Everyone looks like they're going to have their best season to date. But there is no question who the best quarterback on this team is right now. Dylan Gabriel is by far and away the best quarterback on the team. He missed a ton of layups last year, man. a ton of plays where someone's streaking wide open and he just overthrows him somehow. And you're left scratching your head saying, how is a Division I quarterback, do you just miss that easy of a throw? Now, he'll have to make those layups during the season, but it sounds like he's more confident. He's a lot faster moving around in the pocket. I think a reason why Gabriel's going to be better this year is I think he's going to be more of a factor in the run game. He's not Kyler Murray out there running around, but it's just going to open up more things for him and the offense as well when he's able to keep it on the zone read. They weren't able to do that last year because you just mentioned 49-0. Mm-hmm. We all saw life without Dillon Gabriel. I mean, Davis Beville's the worst OU quarterback that I think I've seen in my lifetime, right? They're scared to death to have to go through another game if Dillon Gabriel were to go down. But Jackson Arnold's your number 2 quarterback as a true freshman. Yeah. They feel good about him. I was at a luncheon before training camp. Jeff Lebby's calling him the future of the program. You're really going to like him. Like, apparently this kid's got it. I mean, he's going to be a player. But Dillon Gabriel's QB1, and having a legitimate backup behind him is going to allow for him to be more of a threat in the running game, which I think is going to open up things for him. So I think he's top 3. I would probably put him at number 2 behind Jalen Daniels, but he's going to be a lot better. He just needs a wide receiver 1 to emerge, man. Like, for me offensively, it's a lot less about Dillon Gabriel and more about who the wide receivers going to be. Because we can talk about the defense last year and how bad they were, or maybe how average Dillon Gabriel was. The wide receivers were not good last year, man. And I know Mims ended up being a second-round draft pick by the Broncos, but I think he had his worst year in his 3-year career at OU, just with some drops out of nowhere. They've got to have someone or someone's emerge at wide receiver, and they've got candidates there, but it doesn't sound like that true, legit number 1 has emerged yet out of camp.
Yeah, that's kind of my follow-up question, right? You lose a 1,000-yard rusher in Eric Gray. You lose Marvin Mims, as you just mentioned. I'm looking at my Phil Steele magazine right now, and I still see that Drake Stoops is on the roster, which is bullshit. Like, that guy is at least 30 at this point. I don't know how the hell he's still there. But, yeah, in the run game and the passing game, I mean, it doesn't sound like you have a lot of confidence about the skill position talent up there right now.
Well, actually, at running back, I do, man, because Barnes and Sawchuk are both back. And if you watch the Cheez-It Bowl against Florida State, Gavin Sawchuk was a true freshman last year, and he really didn't play all that much a year ago, but he balled out against FSU, who everyone thinks is going to be really good. Now, he had a really costly fumble in that game that might have lost OU the football game. But other than that, like, he looked the part. They're going to have like a legit little 1-2 duo. They've got a freshman, Caleb Hicks, who's looked really good. Tawi Walker is built like Samaje Perine and maybe their 4th quarter short yards back. Like, I don't just feel good about running back. I feel like they could have like one of the better running back cores in the entire conference. Like, I if we were to rank the positions that I feel best about right now, I'd put like safety 1. I might put running back 2. So I think they're going to be really good at that spot. But if we're going to list concerns, I'll put wide receiver at number 1 right now.
All right. What about on the defensive side of the football? You brought up the strength at safety. Look, when Brent Venables took the job, that was the narrative, right? Like, this defense is going to be better, and it's going to be better immediately. Well, it was significantly worse last year than it was for most of Lincoln Riley's tenure at Oklahoma. Obviously, you brought up the recruiting earlier. People are confident that Venables is going to eventually turn things around on that side of the ball because that is his area of expertise. But where are you at with this Oklahoma defense? Can the 2023 version be significantly better than what we saw in 2022?
So we have Bob Stoops on our show every single Tuesday, and he went out to the first few training camp practices, and we asked him, like, hey, I mean, what'd you see? What was your big impression? His big impression is how much bigger the defense is. And not just like that lame old line, like, oh, everyone went through an off season with Schmitty, so they're all bigger, faster, stronger. I think they had one defensive lineman last year that was 300 pounds or heavier. That was like the Alex Grinch speed D. They didn't want big fat guys up on the defensive line. Now they've got, I think, north of 5 300-pound defensive linemen. They're just a lot bigger. And they did that in the transfer portal for sure. But all that to say, I think the defensive line is going to be a lot better. They're good at edge rusher. I think that they're going to be good off the edge. Not elite in the interior of the defensive line, but maybe as good as they've been in a while, man. You got Stutzman back at linebacker. I'm sure you guys know all about him. Third year in the system.
Yeah.
Jaron Canick will probably be your other linebacker. He showed a lot of promise last year. But corners and safeties, man, they're going to have two. Well, I think they'll have more than two pretty good corners with Woody Washington back as well. But at safety, man, Peyton Bowen is back. Or excuse me, Billy Bowman is going to be one of your starting safeties. And then a guy that I really like and has had one hell of a camp so far is Reggie Pearson, the Tech transfer. Now, funny story about Reggie Pearson. When OU played Tech last year in Lubbock in overtime, OU tried to run a trick play where they threw it to Dylan Gabriel. Reggie Pearson came up and absolutely destroyed Dylan Gabriel and knocked him out of the game. And now Reggie Pearson's on your team. And that's like, no one really knew about Reggie Pearson, OU fans going into that game, but that's the one play you remember. And that's kind of like what he's been for this team. He's like a headhunter that'll go down and, kind of put his helmet down against the run, a really physical player, someone that they've needed. I mentioned Peyton Bowen earlier. He's going to get in the mix. It's just the back end of the defense. It's got a lot of athleticism, a lot bigger bodies. I don't think this is going to be a top 20 defense this year, but they're going to be a lot better at getting to the quarterback, a lot better at covering at the back end. And dude, just those two things being better this year is going to go a long way and not being just a dog shit defense like they were a year ago.
You're telling me they're not going to give up 30 points per game this season?
God, again, everything goes back to the schedule, man.
Yep.
There's no because it's not just the teams on the schedule, but who are the great quarterbacks that OU is going to face this year on the schedule? I think the Big 12 as a whole is kind of down quarterback wise, at least right now, especially like we remember 08 and 09, right?
Oh,
you're throwing out like Bradford, Colt McCoy, Graham Harrell. Like there's so many great quarterbacks in the league. It's just not that league this year. So there's no excuse why OU to me shouldn't be at least a top 50 defense, a top 50 defense.
Yeah. Todd Reesing, Chase Daniel that year too in 08. It was ridiculous. All right. Last thing, Tyler, before we let you go, and really appreciate you joining me, man. This has been a ton of fun. We talked a little bit before we started recording the move to the SEC. Everybody in Austin, super excited about making the move. We're all bracing ourselves. Obviously big hopes and goals for 2023, but the excitement level, of course, around here is just through the roof for 2024 and beyond. What's it been like for Oklahoma as you guys brace yourselves for the transition to the SEC?
It's been like a shot in the arm, a little bit of excitement because, and I think Texas can relate to this too, is the home schedules have just been so crap recently. And because OU and Texas play in Dallas every single year, your home schedule tends to be a lot less sexier. Now, at least Texas had Alabama coming last year, right? OU had Nebraska come a couple of years ago, but that's not the Nebraska of old. So for over 10 years now, man, it's been, well, unless there's an awesome non-conference opponent coming in, like a Notre Dame or Ohio State or a Tennessee, the home games kind of suck, man. The home games suck. They're all 11 a.m. And God bless Iowa State fans. I'm sure they're awesome, but only about 60 of them show up to Norman when they play here, right?
Yeah.
Only about 80 Baylor fans show up when Baylor plays here. Only about 40 Tech fans show – like it's just not – it hasn't been all that much fun, man. Like not exciting opponents at terrible kickoff times, and the fan base is just – they just don't travel in this league, I mean, Kansas State will bring some, but – for the most part, like they just don't travel. So the opportunity to have Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina your first year in the SEC, I can't imagine how many Alabama fans are going to come to Norman, how many Tennessee fans are going to come to Norman. Hell, how many South Carolina fans are going to come to Norman, right? Yeah. So everyone's just excited about, a better home schedule with fans that really dig college football as much as they do. And it's just been so interesting, like the differences between Norman and Austin going into the league. Like I was at a Norman Chamber of Commerce meeting earlier this year, and they had their guys go around to select SEC towns last football season to kind of see how they run things, right?
Yeah.
So Tuscaloosa is not as big of a town as Norman is population-wise. It's a little bit smaller. But what Tuscaloosa makes on an average SEC game day compared to what Norman makes on an average Big 12 game, it's 3-1. Tuscaloosa, 3-1. Tuscaloosa makes $33 million for an average SEC game. Norman makes $11 million for an average Big 12 game. So the influx of cash and business with all these visiting fans and more interested OU fans is going to kind of change the town a little bit. The question is, and Norman's an awesome college town, but is it ready for LSU fans to drink 3 of your bars dry by 1 p.m. on a Saturday, right? When Alabama fans are on a Friday, yeah. When Alabama fans are bringing their RVs to town on Wednesday or Thursday, where are you going to put them? It's not a problem in Austin, right? Austin's got plenty of hotels and restaurants and bars and all that. And Norman's just not there yet. So I'm just kind of waiting and see just how SEC ready, maybe not OU is, but like the town is. Luckily, Oklahoma City's nearby, right? So it's not like people are going to have to stay 2 hours away or anything, but there's just so much more people that are going to be in town. Can Norman accommodate everyone? And I don't know the answer to that right now, but it's awesome. I mean, all of it, dude, it's just so exciting. New teams coming in. And I'll tell you this, like if I was a Florida State fan right now, I'd be really worried about my future, how much less money we're going to make, the conference that we're in. I think for the OU fan, it's nice to be able to sit back with all this craziness that's been going on with conference realignment and say, we're good, man. Like our future's secure here. We don't have to worry about anything. We are secure where we're at. We're where we want to be. Everyone's down for this move.
Yeah, it was smart by both schools to be first, right? Like this
seriously.
Newest wave of realignment started when Texas and Oklahoma made the announcement that they were headed to the SEC. So, yeah, the schools took care of their business. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for 2024. And this has been a lot of fun as well. Y'all make sure to follow Tyler on Twitter. You see his Twitter handle at the top right quadrant of your screen, Tyler_McComas. And if you're looking for some more OU football content, make sure you check him out. He co-hosts The Rush from 2 to 6 every weekday afternoon on The Ref up in Norman. Tyler, great catching up, brother. I will see you soon for sure. Thanks so much for the time today.
You bet, man. Anytime.